Excellent. So today is probably going to be a little bit more short and sweet than some of my other stuff that I've done with Saltwise, but we're going to specifically talk a little bit about our hot topic today in the middle of summer, which is freezing rain or freezing fog, freezing drizzle. You can put them all together, and the question I'm posing is, in everybody's minds right now, do you think this is something that is, becoming more common in your area? And, if it is, what can we do about it? What can we do with it? What can't we do with it? I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of, is there any newer equipment out there, maybe some new technology that might make um, what I call a difficult winter weather event, probably the most challenging that any operator or manager will face. Is there stuff out there that might help us make it a little bit better? As a operator, I dread freezing rain events. There's not one good thing I can think of to say about them. Um, I will talk a little bit and maybe touch on it a few times. And I say here, what's the big deal with pavement temperatures? Pavement temperatures play an important role in everything we do winter maintenance, but in freezing rain events, I will say it is one of the most critical pieces of information that I need to know and that I like to know. Just like freezing rain itself, 1 or 2 degrees makes a big difference in what's going to happen. Same thing with our pavement temperatures. 1 or 2 degrees is going to decide whether it falls onto the road and has a little bit of melting, or if it's going to fall on the road and cause problems. And then I'll talk a little bit about liquids. Do they play a role at all in freezing rain events? When can you use them? When should you not use them? And again, like Allison said, if there's questions along the way or at the end, um, please ask. I'm going to put my contact information up at the end also. If you think of something afterwards, uh, feel free to reach out at any time. So I say here, freezing rain is used to be in my mind a once in a while occurrence, is now becoming a more common winter weather event for us to deal with it. Is it? And my answer is yes. I can go back in the 20-ish years that I've been doing um, the municipal side of things with plowing and everything, and I can remember having to deal with a slippery freezing rain type event maybe once every 3, 4, 5 winters, maybe. And now it just seems that I can kind of almost count on something every year. I put the dates of the events and times where we've dealt with them here since 2020. The one I have over 2 days in 2023 was a record setter for our area. We accumulated 3/4 of an inch of ice, and with the complications of even clearing pavements, we had trees down, power lines down. We had a whole bunch of other stuff to deal with, which just turned our routes into longer route cycle times, and we ended up having to adjust our application rates even farther and increase them, just not knowing if we were going to get back. Here's a few shots of that day that I took, and like I said, it was quite a challenge all the way around. Um, this information I have at the top is a touch old, but I found something from UW Wisconsin Stevens Point where even 10 plus years ago, it was starting to become on the radar a little bit more of are we seeing more of these events, and are they going to become more common? Uh, this year, something that came out of the University of Michigan. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's kind of starting to say that things are changing, and especially in the southern Midwest or the farther south you go, that some of the areas that might have been accustomed to all snow events or the majority of the events were snow are starting to see this transition to a freezing rain, sleet. You're seeing a little bit more of that. And not to get too technical into the weather kind of things, but like I said, there's a very shallow window as far as, or layer actually in the atmosphere as far as temperatures go. on if this is actually going to be a freezing rain event or not. And you will hear meteorologists and forecasting services and everybody else, they will flat out tell you it is probably the most difficult thing for them to try and forecast, because 1 degree is can be the make or break, and sometimes does. Again, I'm not going to read this, but it basically kind of says that what is it and what are its impacts. And the bottom number 3 kind of caught my attention a little bit. That ice accumulation on things can increase the weight of even your common tree branch by 30 times, which I wholeheartedly believe in. Trying to move some of the stuff off our roads, you could definitely tell the added weight. Sorry. Freezing rain, material applications. So you have a forecast that says that you probably are going to have some freezing rain, and what would be your plan? How do you know when you're going to start applying? How do you know when you're going to stop? Do you stop when the rain stops? You definitely don't want to be late to the party. This is one thing where a delayed start or some question marks up in the air could certainly cost you a lot, as far as accidents and just overall issues, general public traffic, your own trucks. We'll talk a little bit about sand. Sand is kind of becoming less common in winter maintenance, but the application rate chart that I'm going to share, sand has its place in freezing rain in this chart. And then for your applications is more better. I'll talk a little bit about, can you pre-treat your roads with anything? Can you do it with granular, liquid? The answer for granular is yes. The recommendation is low speed, low volume roads. When you start to get higher traffic counts and higher speeds, when you pre-treat with a granular material, whether it be salt, sand mix, traffic will start to sweep or move the material out of the drive lanes and even off the road surface. And at that point, it's useless. Absolutely no liquid before freezing rain events. I will not pre-treat even with a sleet forecast. All the time if you were to do that, your liquid is going to dilute before it has any effectiveness. So it is just wasted time and material. And then again, we'll talk a little bit about, can you spread at the quote unquote normal or usual rates? So again, pre-event, prior to anything happening, absolutely no liquids. They will be ineffective. Low speed, low volume for granular. I'm going to go back a second. When you are pre-treating, or if you make the choice to pre-treat prior to an event, spreading speed will also play key in how well this application is actually going to work. Kind of looking at the picture I put up here, I can see some salt getting past that white line, and yes, there will always be some that's going to occur, but the slower you can spread pre-event, also the more that will stay there. Picture on the left, I've actually seen roads like this before. I saw it last year. Those are not fun, even flat. Looks like an application had been made at one point, possibly, but in these larger, long duration events where ice accumulations go over, your 1/10 of an inch or more, you're going to need multiple applications. Here's the chart that I talked about a couple minutes ago. You will see that freezing rain has its own special weather condition for applications. And when you look over to the side and you see abrasives, winter sand, you see a whole bunch of not recommendeds. But when you get into the freezing rain weather category, you start looking over at that sand column, and all of a sudden there are recommended application rates. And the other thing you will notice when you look over back left, they are higher than your just salt application rate. So if you're mixing sand, everybody has a I don't want to call it a magic mix ratio. If we do for a freezing rain event, we do, um, in general, we try and do a 2 to 1, two buckets of sand to 1 bucket of salt. We try and mix it up as best we can. Um, but the point of the chart is, you're going to need to apply more, especially with freezing rain, because depending on how hard it's falling, it may just start washing it off the road before anything can happen. So spreading sand or sand salt mixes, again, more material is needed. Now, this kind of goes against everything we preach for salt wise and all of our salting classes, where we always talk about, we're trying to reduce our applications and, do what we can to help our impacts on, groundwater, our freshwater systems. But like I said in the beginning, freezing rain is its own ugly event. And um, unfortunately, sometimes we got to kind of take the book and set it aside of what we, should be doing, and we need to do what we have to do to make the roads as safe as possible for the public. But we still do have some controls, and keeping that sand salt or salt on the road in place where it's actually going to do the work is critical, just like in all the other aspects of when we spread. Wetting the sand, pre-wetting the sand, if possible, is recommended. If we're not using sand, even if we have just salt, and we're having I'll call it a minor icing event, or we're expecting a glaze or whatever, we will always pre-wet. And one of the big reasons why we will pre-wet our salt is just the bounce and scatter. Anytime you wet salt, those granulars, those kernels become heavier, and they tend to stay and stick where you need them. So the same theory is the same for freezing rain, even if you're using sand. Um, but remember, sand can be a traction aid, and that's solely why it's used in freezing rain events, but it does absolutely zero melting. So if you are throwing whatever pounds per mile in straight sand during a freezing rain event, you are doing no melting. So if the ice starts to accumulate on the road, or you get a glaze of ice on the road, the sand will not melt it. And again, at the bottom, I kind of put a couple question marks. It said your mix ratio. We've done everywhere from a 2 to 1 to a 1 to 1. It all kind of just depends what we think is going to happen, and what our forecasts are saying. I don't tend to lean one or the other. I kind of like, if I have to use sand, a 2 to 1. Um, can get kind of messy to clean up after the fact, but it just like I said, I am not an advocate of sand, but in freezing rain events, I will certainly use it. A couple of quick shots of, it says at the top, typical scatter pattern of salt, but this could be salt sand too. When you're spreading it dry, you're losing a lot off into the shoulder, off to the edge of the road into the shoulders. When you wet it, you're keeping more in the center. Never a more critical time than in a freezing rain event do you want every last bit of material that you're throwing to be on that pavement to try and help you do something. Little bit about pavement temperatures. Personal opinion statement at the top. There is nothing more critical than pavement temperatures. This has been huge for me in the last handful of years here at the town. Just having an idea of what's going on at the pavement surface. And regardless, in our winter, operations, I love it, and I have it in all my trucks, and encourage the drivers to take note and to take that into account with their application rates. But freezing rain, when it makes that 1 degree makes a difference. This is definitely an awesome tool to have. You're going to know when to start. You're going to know when to stop. And, again, at the bottom, on average, your freezing rain events are going to use more salt, sand, per mile than any other event. An example I will give of this is the one event we had in 2022. It was a predicted freezing rain event. The precipitation was supposed to start before daybreak. And it did. It started about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. All my staff, we were here, we were ready, and we went out and we noticed that none of us in any of our routes found a pavement temperature that was below 35 degrees. So we made the choice to not spread. And it wasn't till actually after daybreak, it was about 7:30 when we finally started seeing the pavement temperature hit 34, 33. So once it hit 33, we knew it was quote unquote bound to happen. The precipitation wasn't stopping. So we started to spread. Subsequently, at the end, pavement temperatures got to 34 and we're still rising. We knew that we could stop spreading. And, just on that event alone, we probably saved 15 or 20 tons of material just knowing the pavement temperatures and what we could and couldn't do and when we should and should not do it. Every agency around me, was out, same with us. So, we knew it was coming, but just knowing those pavement temperatures gave us a little bit of a delay and we were still able to quote unquote save some material. Another thing that technology is bringing us is very in-depth forecasting options, weather information stations. The one on the right is one from a company called Frost Solutions, and they were actually just awarded, I think it was most innovative new product, or they were given some type of award at the APWA Snow and Ice Conference recently for this weather station. These, what used to be kind of like state agencies, larger counties, cities, those were the ones that got into this stuff. They're becoming a lot more affordable. And there's a lot of other agencies now kind of looking at this as another tool to have of, what's going on. Allison mentioned that I do some work over the border with McHenry County, and they pay a weather service for 24/7 consultation. And this is one of their screenshots that they get. A great working relationship I have with them is, they readily will give you their forecasts and share all their information. Obviously, what's happening in that county may not be the same thing happening in my county, but since my county borders theirs, any information I can get to help me make a better decision, the better. They will go and they will give you, this one I chose, it just says light snowstorm, so it wasn't a freezing rain event, but they will give you your recommended application rates and all the details of. This is another service that they use, and this one is interesting to me, and it's been around for a little bit. If you look at the fourth arrow or point down, it says level of grip. So now there are ways for these systems to measure the grip rating of the pavement, how well a vehicle tire is going to be able to grip the surface of the pavement. And when that number starts to change, they will know that, all right, something's starting to happen or something's going on, and their forecasts will forecast grip rating for them. So it's kind of like almost, you're getting a little bit of an insight of what people are going to see or are seeing for traction. Sometimes too, mechanical removal is a possibility. This was not our record ice, but this was another ice event that we had where we obviously accumulated enough that we had made a round of application on the roads and it was starting to break up. We were starting to see some of the results of that application, but we found that we could actually put our blades down and move some of it off the road. So we did it. The more we can get off the pavement in any situation in winter, the better. The less that's left behind the truck for those materials to work on. So, just another possibility that could be out there. Some of these plows and prototypes are coming up with. There's multi-edge plows. There's a lot of different types of cutting edges. There's a lot of technology right there on your front blade that can help in different weather and pavement condition scenarios. This type of truck, I don't see a lot of. Actually, I'll take that back. I don't see any around here that have their spreaders mounted ahead of their drive axles. But kind of doing a little social media poll, getting ready for this last month, kind of asked a couple of groups like, what's good for equipment, what's bad for equipment, and a lot of operators said, I really like having this, the ability to discharge material here ahead of my tires because it helps me. It helps me keep my truck on the road. So, again, another option. Is it ideal for everybody's situation? Probably not, but the options are out there. Something that we do on all of our trucks, and not just for freezing rain, but just because of some of the hills and areas that we plow. Instead of having to manually put chains on the tires when it's time, I build all my trucks with these auto chain systems. So with the flip of a button, those chains get slung under the back tires, and I've got chains. Definitely a very big help when we get freezing rain. Truck will definitely slide all over the place still, but gives me a little bit more than not having them at all. Then sometimes the solution can be right in front of you or next to you. And this was a kind of a aha moment we had at my former municipality. So we had a couple of single axle wing trucks, and it seemed like they always had difficulty when we got, if we got some ice or it was slippery, and roads that the drivers just had trouble with. These other trucks in our fleet would pull up and they drive up and down them and salt like there was no tomorrow. And at one point in time, one of the drivers said, "Hey, can I pull the wing off the front of my truck if we're going to get freezing rain?" We said, "Sure." And we pulled the wings off of them, and it just put the balance back enough on that rear axle that those trucks, did much better the next time we had an event like that. Definitely kind of a pain in the butt, but it was worth it because if I can't keep my trucks on the road, then everybody else is going to have a long day too. And I said, what else can help? This is actually something that I've investigated a little bit. We may actually try it somewhere near in the future to see what happens. I know there's been some trial runs on some interstates and things, but with Cargill, I think it's through Cargill or a product that can be obtained from Cargill. But they have a pavement. It's called Winter Pave, so it's an asphalt antifreeze that you can add right to the pavement, and then you lay it down on the road. And there's supposedly some benefits of having this, right in your paving. Definitely isn't cheap. I think it about doubles the cost per ton when I last looked at it. But again, when we talk about options, the new things that are coming out there, this is another one. Could this be the answer in areas that are starting to see these more frequent freezing rain events? Is this, something that could help kind of get us over the hump and make things a little bit more manageable? So after that, that's about all I got. It's unfortunately, I don't have the magic answer for freezing rain. I wish I did, because I would have wrote a book and been retired by now. But it's just a little bit of insight of what I know and what we've experienced here. So summarizing up again, it's very difficult to predict. Literally 1 degree it will make the difference. Our area, I think, based on what I've seen, locally right here, I think we are seeing a little bit, an uptick in frequency and even larger accumulation events. We're seeing more than just that. Yeah, we could get a glaze on the pavement surface. We're actually seeing, measurable accumulations of ice. And I say use technology to put yourself in the best position. Those pavement temperature sensors are lifesavers, especially in freezing rain events. And all the, some of the other things I talked about too. The technology is there to help us, and even these events, it certainly can. If you are using liquids or you are going to get into using liquids, use them to keep those materials where they're needed the most. Please do not treat roads with just liquids before freezing rain events. It is just a waste of time and material. You will give yourself and the general public a false sense of hope, and you won't like the outcome. And then last point, just like with snow and salting or applying materials after you plow, mechanically remove it if you can. If the option's there, put the blade down, get as much of it off the road, and let the material go to work on what's left. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions, but there is my contact information. If somebody thinks of something after the fact, please always feel free to reach out.
I'm going to pop back on here. Thanks so much, Matt. That was awesome. And as Matt said, if you have any questions right now, you can type them into the chat or you can email me, wselwise@gmail.com. And I'll give people a couple minutes to do that if they have any questions. But awesome job, Matt. I'm going to ask if you afterwards could share those slides with me. I think I'm going to take a few of them and put them into our training for the Walworth County class.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I had seen some of those before that I remember you shared with me kind of like during that big storm in 2023, just unreal amounts of ice, and to kind of take in the reality of how difficult it is for you and your operators even just to move down the roadways safely. It's a lot. I had not heard of winter pave before. That's really cool stuff. Definitely I want to research that a little bit. And I also, as you were sharing, was thinking about some slides. I'll try to pull them up. They were shared by Andy Erickson. He's out of a lab in Minnesota. And he had shared at a conference, I think earlier this spring, some research that they were doing. So this was all in a lab, but putting sand down on ice. And so, I mean, they were getting down to the basics of like, okay, let's test the friction of, bare pavement. There's good friction, bare ice, there's no friction. If we put straight sand on ice, we actually don't have that much friction, but you kind of have to get the sand to embed, which, when you're mixing the salt in, right, like with sand, you're working to do that. And then they were also looking at pre-wetting the sand with salt brine to get that sand to stick. And I want to say there was a European country he mentioned that was heating the sand. So I don't know if you've heard about that work at all, or maybe you've got something to add.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, actually, I don't remember where it was, but I had seen pictures of actually a couple things over in Europe. One of them was they were taking the truck's exhaust system, and it made a connection, and it went back and around, and they used the heat from the exhaust system to like underneath the bed to actually heat the materials up. And there was another one that I saw, and their application equipment is far different than what you and I see driving down our roads. You'd see one of their trucks and you go, wow, that's a plow truck. But there was a country that had experimented with using hot water to spray on the material that they were spreading, just utilizing, that the water was X amount of degrees and using the heat from that to start the melting process.
You kind of get it stuck in there, so it's more like that, like sandpaper, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe it was Corey from Eau Claire too. It talked about like it was extra work, but his operators were like driving to where the sand was being, I don't want to say like manufactured, but so it was just being processed, and so it was still kind of warm, and then they load it directly into the beds of the truck and then go around.
Sure. And I've seen some people that have the ability to not only sand but their salt, they will keep it inside, so it's quote unquote room temperature. You put it in your truck, and obviously it doesn't stay like that forever, but it's kind of neat to see people trying to find these little advantages to, you know, try and get a hand up on some of these, events that we have to deal with.
Especially the really nasty ones, right?
Oh
Where,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Well, and the pictures that I showed in this presentation and had shared with you, one of our tough things was, we decided, okay, we know how long it takes us to go through our route, and we accounted that it's going to be slippery, and we set our application rates, and then there'd be a tree across one of our roads, so we would drive our plow truck back and park it and go get our wheel loader and push the tree across the road. Well, that doesn't happen like that. So now we're behind even farther. So, we were upping our application rates, counting on having to deal with this kind of stuff, because the last thing you want is that sheet of ice when you get back, because then you're talking probably about multiple application rates of just trying to get the road, to somewhat normal driving conditions. It's all a game.
and having as many tools as you can, right? Like available, and yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember one of the first times I talked about freezing rain and using, just using salt in freezing rain. And somebody asked me, do you still pre-wet in freezing rain? And I said, absolutely. And they said, well, you said, if you put liquids down before, they just get washed away and, or dilute and they're not effective. And I said, the only reason I do it was, for those two slides I showed about bounce and scatter. I know the liquid itself is not going to do anything, but if it weights down that material and keeps it on the road, then it's still doing a job for me.
It sticks there. So
Yep.
yeah. Well, this was great. Thank you, Matt. And I do another little thing to share. I did finally get a shipment of a few items of clothing. So you have your own Saltwise shirt coming your way when we do our class. So maybe I
Excellent.
can get it in the mail before then, yeah.
Excellent.
But
I'll be happy to change it to something besides tornado cleanup.
so what's your timeline with that? Is it
I can
no
I
end
can
in sight?
I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but
Okay.
it took waiting for utility companies to get communication lines out of trees that were on the roads. It took 2.5 days for all of my roads to be passable, in both directions.
Wow.
And we did some chipping, but for this, there was just so much of it. We chose to do a haul off, and one of our local farmers has got a burn pile, and I've got two separate contractors working with me, and we are literally just hauling and hauling and hauling.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez. I
that's
mean,
what I
after like
said
the
too.
ice, the tornado, it's like you guys aren't gonna have any trees left.
There's still a lot of them, but it was quite the sight to see. Like there was some roads that you could definitely tell where the rotation was, because there were, beautiful homes down by the lakes. And granted, they got lucky. The homes didn't, take a hit, but there was one yard that had probably 8 or 10, and I'll call them mature trees, 24-inch plus trunk diameter trees, and it looks like somebody took their finger and just pushed them right over. And their wooded lot went to a perfectly clear open lot.
Oh, that's
So
sad. But like you said, I mean, keeping it all in perspective, right? Like some they still have a roof over their head. People,
yeah, yep.
could use work.
We had one, as far as I know, we had one of the farmers lost part of his shed, and we had a tree fall, and the branch hit the house. And then there was another one, a house was being built, that a tree fell, and a good sized tree took out the garage that was being built. But as far as anything else goes, residential, structure wise, I think we pretty much came away pretty clean.
Well, I should let you go. Maybe we take a little lunch break.
Yeah.
Before you get back to it. And thanks, everybody. Hope you didn't mind hearing a little bit more about the day-to-day
Yeah.
down in
Anybody
southern
looking to
Wisconsin.
do some tree work, let me know.
Yeah, it sounds like if anyone, has some downtime, Matt can put you to work.
Yep.
So,
Good job security, I guess.
all right. Well, take care, Matt, and we'll